Well, we're here today, and sometimes things will happen where a failure or an event will happen, and it really kind of feels like a crash at the time. And then what we end up finding when we look back is that that was actually, instead of a crash or a low point, that was actually the launching point for something even better. So this is Gary Huff, and I'm here today with Martin Howey, and I appreciate the time for us to get together. I just wanted to have a conversation with you about, is there times where you might look back and see something with your business or your personal life where you had a failure and it was maybe tough at that time, but you found that it was actually it ended up being a great time when you look back, and it was an opportunity to move forward.
Well, Gary, that has happened to me, and it's happened to me more than one time, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? I mean, none of us get through this life without having a few ups and downs. I suppose one of the most significant, I want to call it a failure, but I'm not so sure it was a failure as such, but it was a mistake on my part that cost me a lot of time, a lot of emotional stress, and a lot of money at the same time. Several years ago, I had retired. I had made enough money, and I said, I'm out of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I was doing a little bit of freelance work, and I was writing some manuals for a very well-known marketer, and just enjoying myself, just taking it easy. I just still had 2 kids at home, and just taking it easy. Somebody contacted me from another country. They had seen what I was doing. They liked what I was doing, and they said, I'd really like to know a little bit more about what you're doing and see if there's maybe something we could do together. Well, I said, I'm really not interested. I'm doing this work right now with this marketer and pretty much relaxing and taking life on my terms for once, right? So you're not tied into a business. But he said, he was very insistent, and he said, well, I'd like to come over and I'd like to see what you're doing and maybe see if there's something we could do together, and we'll just talk about it. So I said, okay, and so he came over and we spent a few days together, and he really liked what he saw. He liked my materials, liked what I was doing, and he said, why don't we put together a business and we'll start it overseas and we'll build this in my country, and then once we get it up and running, we can take it to your country, we'll take it around the world. And I said, okay, that sounds good. So at first I didn't want to do it, but the more he talked, the more convincing he was, and I thought, all right. And he had a system, at least in place, at least I thought, for attracting people. I had the materials, he didn't have anything, but I had the materials that could make a process work. He had the skills to be able to get people into a room and into a system. So we joined forces, we put this program into place, and we worked together for quite a while and built up a very significant business. In fact, in 6.5 months, we built the business up to a $12.4 million business. It was very, very quick. We had some great successes. And then one day, I was getting a little bit tired of traveling back and forth anyway. I was there for 6 weeks at a time, back home for 2 weeks, back over there for 6 weeks, back home for 2 weeks, missing some of my kids' games and some of the things that they were involved in. But I was also just getting tired of traveling, right? So at that time, we had talked about where we were and what we were going to do with the business. One of my sons sold his businesses here and joined us and was going to, he gave up everything he had and was going to come into the business. So we went over to that country and we got everything in place. We got back on the plane and we flew back over here, my son and I. And once we got back here, I got a text. No, it wasn't a text, it was a fax, an email, and then a registered letter a few days later saying that you're no longer with our company.
Wow.
And I said, but how can you do that? I've got everything in place. We've got all the legal things. Well, what had happened is we formed a board of directors over there, and then the chairman of the board was his solicitor, his attorney. And so while I was gone, they forged all the papers and changed my name and changed the whole thing. And of course, he was the witness to the thing, to the whole transaction. Took me out of the picture. And there I was with nothing. We had invested everything we had, my life savings, everything, into this business to get it up and running. We couldn't make it work. So couldn't make the financial part of it work or the partnership part of it work. So next thing you know, I'm sitting there with nothing, completely devastated. My wife said, sue him. Well, if you're going to sue somebody in another country, especially in that country,
Right.
you've got to have solicitors or attorneys in their country that know the law. You have to post a bond, and whoever loses has to pay for the attorneys on both sides, the court costs, and any damages that were occurred. Well, we had a whole cadre of consultants in our business. But if for some reason they had to stop doing business while this thing was in litigation, and who knows how long that's going to be, they could turn around and sue us because we held them up from doing business.
Right.
And then all the investment they made in the business was gone. The potential income they could make was gone. And whatever they gave up, the opportunity cost from leaving their other business was gone. So we ended up with nothing. And I was devastated. I laid on the floor and cried for several days because I just went into this depression state and couldn't even function. So we were really in trouble. But then I decided, I've got to do something. I can't stay like this forever. I mean, I got a family to support. I got things that are going on here. I've got to be able to support them. So I picked back up and I said, I remember what Lee Iacocca said when he was fired from Ford. He said, the sweetest form of revenge is massive success.
Yeah.
So how can I get back at this person? I can't do it legally. I can't sue them. It doesn't make any sense. Traveling back and forth, getting attorneys, and all the rest of that. Who knows what the jury's going to decide or the judge is going to decide. So the best thing to do is just go out and become as massively successful as I can. The materials were mine. So I put all the materials together and I made this thing work over here. And eventually he lost all of his consultants and the business went upside down. So that was a mistake, I suppose, or a failure on my part to set things up properly and monitor them so that these kinds of things wouldn't happen. But I didn't know, right? I mean, I trusted this person. I suppose he trusted me. But I think the thing that I learned from it was, and the benefit was, that had it not been for that, I would probably still be retired, still be going along on a merry way, right, and not having had the success that I had with the company that I have now. So his taking me under in that situation caused me to start another business, caused me to become more focused in that business, caused me to have more success than I probably would have ever had before. It helped me make a lot of new friends, like you, for instance, and some of the people that we're here with, and have a whole new world opened up to me. And really, I was too young to retire in the first place. And so, still too young to retire,
Yeah.
Some people may argue about that, but anyway, that's kind of what happened there. Now, what can you learn from that? Sometimes we look at our failures rather as stumbling blocks, or we look at our failures as a defeatist mechanism, when we really should be looking at those things as stepping stones. What can we learn from this? How can we take what we've got here in this situation and use it as a springboard for more massive success than we would have ever had before? Yeah. What are the lessons that we learn out of this situation? Sometimes when our kids were growing up and they would have some problems and they would drive my wife and I crazy, she would say, and I get so frustrated, she would say, what are we supposed to learn from this experience they're going through? Patience and understanding, right, and long suffering, exactly. and kindness and humility and grace and all the rest of the things that we're supposed to go through. So I think that was my big thing, was I got to a position that I would have never gotten to before had it not been for that massive flop in my business.
So there's a real trajectory of how we're progressing today. And when an event like that happens, it really gives us an opportunity for another direction. It really is. It sent you in a different direction, and you've made it a better direction than maybe where you're going. So it's that stepping stone idea of being able to take it as a step to go to the next place.
And if we look at it as an opportunity, not as a failure or as some kind of a problem that we can't recover from, but all right, how can I learn from this? What can I take off from here and move forward? Remember Iacocca, when he was fired from Ford, I mean, it was over. His age, and who wants this guy? He went to work for Chrysler, and then the next thing you know, Chrysler was on top of the world, selling more cars than anybody. Yeah. And so, what can we do with it? See, here's the thing. I just turned 68 years old. And some people say, well, 68, that's like Moses, who lives that long? Well, and the old story is, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself, right? Yeah. But the thing is, I've been able now, and I looked at this new age as I now can bundle up 68 years of experience and invest it in the next year. What can you do? You don't have the experience that I've got. Now, you may have some better experiences than I have, or more in-depth experiences, different experiences. Yeah. But the fact is, if I look at this like, I'm just a year older, that's one thing. But I'm looking at like, man, I've got some experience that somebody else doesn't have. I've got a lot of experience that I can bundle up and invest in the next year, which gives me, if I look at it properly, it gives me an advantage that somebody else doesn't have.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Remember Reagan when he talked about he wasn't going to let the youth of his opponent,
go over. Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of opportunity as we come up against failure, and you've talked about the impact that it's had on you and how you've taken that as a stepping stone. So let me ask one more question to help folks as they're dealing with it, because it's that time when you said when it first happened and just the depression and things that go on. One thing I'm trying to look for is how to start maybe not enjoying failure, but at least understanding that failure can lead to good things if you understand it that way. So if someone were about to see something happen, or have just gone and had a mistake or a failure happen, and they came to you, what counsel would you give them for dealing with that time when they're feeling? How do you deal with that time when it just happens? What would you give them as counsel to do?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that we all have a terminal disease. It's called life.
Yeah.
Right? We're not going to get out of this alive. And during this process that we call living here on this planet, we're going to have our ups and downs. Not everything is smooth. When you shoot a rocket off to the moon, it doesn't go from here to the moon. It veers off course a little bit, and there's some adjustments that are made, and it comes back on course. Same with an airplane. It doesn't fly from LA to New York in one straight line. It's off, they make some adjustments, it comes back on. It's the same thing with our life. You're going to have some ups and downs in your life. You've got to course correct along the way. So if you're smart enough, or you're fortunate enough in some cases to see something coming, sometimes we're blindsided, we don't see it. But if you're fortunate enough to see something coming, all right, say, how can I avoid the situation that's coming up? Or if I know it's impending and there's nothing I can do to get out of it, what plans can I put into place that will help me very quickly recover from this? So we talk about, well, if plan A doesn't work, go to plan B. But what if plan B doesn't work? There's 24 more letters in the alphabet. It doesn't have to be A or B. I mean, we've got a lot of different choices we can make.
There you go.
So how do we know then? If we know that there are 26 letters in the alphabet, right? We don't have to plan for one outcome. Can we look ahead and say, all right, we've got all these other choices. Right. Let's kind of prioritize these and put these in a priority type of an order. So we know that we're going to have a problem. Why don't we set up things in advance that says, if A happens, then we go to B. If B happens, we go to C. B is the best choice, first of all, the best selection first. But then, well, there's some other things that we can do. But what kind of systems can we put into place to make sure A is successful? Yeah. It doesn't fall apart on us. So I'd say, look at this as part of life. We prepare, we plan for the best, but we prepare for the worst, right? We know that if we're going to start into a business, that we're hoping that it's successful. We plan for success. But we know somewhere along the way, something may happen. Not always, but something may happen that could devastate us. So what are we going to do to prepare for that? So that's what I would say. Just make sure that you leave your options open. In every situation, you keep an open mind, saying, what if?
Yeah.
What if? What if it's successful? But what if it's not successful? And you may plan out a mind map or a flow chart of some kind of a thing with some arrows and say, here's where we are. If this happens, we have an arrow over here. If this happens, here's what we do. If this happens, here's some arrows that we can take down here. So I just think plan this thing out a little bit more, and your life even. I mean, sometimes we take life as it comes, and that's okay, But what if it doesn't come the way you want it to?
Right.
What if you're stricken with a disease? Or what if you have an accident and all of a sudden your best laid plans don't work? What are your options going to be?
Exactly.
You have systems set up in place to get you through that situation.
Yeah. So it sounds that key advice there is that there is maybe some motivation or perspective when the event happens, but what really gives you comfort and confidence when you come across failure is that preparation up front, is that I know I've got options, because that I'm lost, I can't do anything from here when it happens is the tough thing to get through. Well, prepare yourself with options and scenarios so that you can, when it does happen, it's not the end. I can always take another path. Oh, and by the way, I have a few paths planned out. Let me try one of those. So.
Well, and you mentioned options. Let's take that into the financial world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, some people have the options where if my stock goes down to a certain level, sell.
Yeah.
Right? If it gets up to a certain level, buy more. It's automatic. Those things are set up in place automatically to prepare for the worst or prepare for a good situation.
Yeah.
Why don't we do the same thing with our lives?
Mm-hmm.
People spend more time planning their vacations than they do planning out their life, the next year of their life, or the next month of their life.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah. And we plan for that vacation because we're focused on that time of a break of enjoyment. Let's spend that time planning our life so the life is the enjoyment as we go along and enjoy it there. Great.
Well, and the older I get, the more I realize that we have a finite amount of time here.
Yeah.
When I was young, I didn't think so much about that because, I've got a long time to live. Well, I'm looking back now, not that I'm old, and for some people I am, but not that I think I'm old, but I'm hoping I have some more years to go. But I realize no matter what happens, I have fewer more years to live than I did when I was 20.
Right, right. Wherever that point is, you get a different perspective.
So let's live life on our terms.
Right.
Let's run our business on our terms. Let's plan for our success and our future on our terms as much as possible. But then if it doesn't happen, let's figure out what we can do to get past that.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time. This has been a great help and a great insights and a great amount of wisdom from yours. Any final words or key message that you would want to make sure we take with us as we go forward?
Well, I would say that if somebody has a dream, they have something they really want to do, just do it.
Yeah.
Because life is going to get past you. It's going to happen one way or another. You're either on board or you're not. You're either going to come to the end of your life and say, hey, I had a great ride here. This time on this planet was an awesome time. I really enjoyed it. I did some things that I really wanted to do. Or you're going to get to that point and look back and say, I wish I would have. Irma Bombeck, when she was 85 years old and she had cancer, she wrote an article called If I Have My Life to Live Over. And you can find it on Google. Nadine Stair, S-T-A-I-R, is another one who wrote a similar article. Mm-hmm. If I had my life to live over, what would I do? How would I spend my time? Would I spend my time doing the things that I'm doing now and drinking green drinks and all the rest of the things that nothing
stuff.
Against that, by the way,
yeah.
But some people are really into that.
Yeah.
Or would I go have some more ice cream and spend more time with my family and spend more time smelling the flowers and enjoying life and spending time with the things that matter, like my kids and my grandkids?
Yeah.
What would I do more? I look back now, I don't have any kids at home. We got 28 grandkids, but I don't have any kids at home. I miss some of those times that were so hard for me when my kids were growing up. but I'm enjoying my grandkids now and being able to spend more time with them. And I've got my life in a situation now where I have the time to do it. Don't wait till you're too old to be able to take that time and try to go back. You can't capture those moments.
Exactly. So enjoy the moment where you're at.
Absolutely.
And understand that that's what you're here for is the moment. Thank you very much.
Gary, thank you.
I really appreciate the time. Every time we have a chance to get together and see each other, and for us to have today to be able to sit down and talk to you, I really appreciate the time.
Well, you're such an inspiration to me, and I've worked with you on a couple of projects, and I've watched you and how your business has evolved, and you're doing an absolutely marvelous job. So if anybody's looking for a way to take their business to another level and maybe have a launch of some type for their business or a product or a service that they have, I know you've got the skill and the ability. You've been doing this for a long time, since I've known you, for several years now, and you're doing a great job. So you're bringing great value to the people that you visit with and you work with.
All right, I appreciate that very much, and we'll have an opportunity to talk again and work on some other projects.
Great. Thanks again, Gary. Appreciate it. Yeah, you bet.
Thanks.